welcome to our 17th Discworld novel, Interesting Times. So, the very beginning of this is just perfect. There is a curse. They say, may you live in interesting times. Now, the first time I read this was years and years and years ago. And the first time I read this, I was like, that doesn't sound like a curse. Have the waters run their course. So I think we all remember the past pandemic. That was definitely an interesting time. So now I perfectly understand how this is a curse. Now, as for the story itself, boo, is this an interesting one. So we get back to our friend Rincewind. And you know, Rincewind is one of my favorite characters, so I am very, very happy about this. Like, is there a character that I don't like in the Discworld novels? I have a favorite character within every single, like, part of Discworld. Rincewind, Granny, and Nanny. The Patrician I rather like. I like Wimes, I like Death, I like a lot of characters, basically. A lot of them are so very, very well written. And this one, how would I sum up this novel? Quantum physics, teleportation or transportation, computation, so science in this world. We get the counterweight continent, which is essentially the Orient in a way. One of the more interesting villains. Real like Lord Hong. Lord Hong is just perfect. He's a perfect villain. And we get Cohen. We get Cohen and the Grey Silver Horde. It's just this. But it is best to start at the beginning, and the way that this book begins, we begin at Cora Celesti. We begin at the table at the Discworld gaming board, where the gods are playing their games. And we got the major players. We got Fate and the Lady. So you know this is going to be a good one. And the motive of this story, of the central plotline, is butterflies. We got the quantum weather butterfly, which is one of the more interesting animal species on the Discworld. Perhaps you've heard about the story about basically the idea of when a butterfly flaps its wings, a storm forms somewhere else. That is it's a quantum weather butterfly. Then we move over to Master Ridcully, the Archangello of the Unseen University, and the Patrician. And here we get a very nice callback to the past book, to the gun, because as you may recall, the was shot by the gun, and ever after he walks with a cane. So in every single book, I believe that he features in, after the last book, the Patrician walks with a stick, with a cane. And just that simple little fact, just that little callback to the past events is one of the main reasons why I really like the Discworld. It doesn't have like huge things like stitching everything together. It has these itty bitty stitches. So the Archangello and the Patrician do have a quite regular meetings up over a cup of coffee, or a cup of tea, a little bit more, discussing the relationship between the university and the city. Delicate. But this time the Patrician kinda needs help from the wizards, because, well, there is the albatross. Well, okay, and there's one very, very fun joke. It literally starts with the gods. On the counterweight continent, you got 5 noble families who have been warring between themselves for centuries, like millennia. We got, it's just the Hungs, the Sungs, the Tangs, the Maxwinis, and the Fangs. And everyone's like, Maxwinis? A very ancient noble family. Pointless albatross. I love the names on this. On the Discworld, it's like Pointless Albatross. So yeah, they are having a conversation because of the Pointless Albatross, because the only reason that the Pointless Albatross shows up in Ankh-Morpork is because of the Counterweight Continent, which has not had any relation with the outside world for decades. This is the first albatross that they are seen in years. Which the Patrician isn't the biggest fan of, because he would rather that the old empire forget that the outside world exists. Because the ancient empire is an empire there. And the reason that he calls for Master Mercury to come have a look at this, well, not having a look at it, is because there's a message that comes with the albatross. Speaking of the Great Wizard, spelled with 2 Z's. So we see that has something to do with a wizard. This is also the book where the birth of Hax happens. And Hax is actually one of, I keep saying it, I have a lot of favorite characters, but Hax is one of my favorite creature, creation, character. I mean, Hax is essentially a magical version of a computer, a supercomputer is what Hex is going to become. Hex is fantastic, basically. But yeah, so, you know, there's only one wizard in the entire Discworld who spells wizard with 2 C's, and he has not been seen since the end of the last book, because of reasons, which I believe was sorcery? Might have been sorcery. Yeah, it's Rincewind, because he is the only one who spells wizard with 2 C's, because he's not the best at spelling any more than he is at magic. I just love how many threads there are in this book, in this story, and how they are just pulled out and intertwined and just... Because Rincewind isn't anywhere where anyone knows where he is. He doesn't know where he is. So the wizards have to go find him. So they use Hex, which has just been born, because quantum. And the entire segment here with Rincewind is just, okay, so he's on a desert island. He has been alone for a long time. And essentially, don't know how I can put this so YouTube doesn't like flag me in the future. But basically, the setup is like a soft core with a lot of lamp hanging in the lampshade, because there's a tribe of pale-faced, tall, statuesque ladies who need a man to continue their lineage, and Rincewind is the only one that they have been able to find. And just when he's, you know, getting possibly into that, the wizards teleport him into Ankh-Morpork. And to begin with, he is not quite there, because there's an entire segment where he's basically like sleepwalking, and he's obsessed with potatoes, which is a running thing with him throughout this book. So he runs into Sata Square, and he becomes a teaching assistant for the Thieves Guild, when they got like a class, a practical class in the Sata Square, and it's just like fantastic. And basically Rincewind doesn't become Rincewind until he gets his hat back. Just, I love that segment. It's just one. There are so many things in this book. Like, when I say that Rincewind is out of it, he actually eats sausages from Dibbler, and he likes them. That's how far gone our friend is. But of course, Rincewind is not allowed to be at peace for long, so he's teleported over to the Counterweight Continent, where he switched places with a literal smoking gun. Well, a smoking barrel. And the first person he meets is Cohen the Barbarian. Like, what are the odds? Because this is as much a story of Cohen as it is of Rincewind and just... So Cohen is there with his silver horde and Mr. Salvoy? Is that his name? I love him. Saveloy. It's Mr. Saveloy. And Mr. Saveloy is a former teacher, so he is a fantastic fit with the old barbarians. This is also where the readers get to meet Lord Hong. He is a terribly intelligent man. Like, you do not want someone like Lord Hong as your opponent because he is smarter than you, he is more talented than you, he has all the answers. He is described as tall, thin and handsome. He wears like tiny little spectacles and he knows everything. He knows who Rincewind is. He knows, like, his dream basically is to take over the world, to take over Ankh-Morpork and play chess against the patrician. Like, that's Lord Hong's dream. He terrifies me. Like, genuinely, Lord Hong is one of the more terrifying villains. Like, literally the guy dreams of eating Dibbler's buns. Well, not those buns, the sausage. Anyway, so yeah. Because on the counterweight continent, and particularly in the city of Hong Kong, which is a major city, there is this cute little pamphlet that has been copied from by person to person and passed along, called What I Did on My Holidays. That is all about these fantastic adventures that the author of the pamphlet had on his holidays abroad with a great wizard. How many people from the counterweight continent have gone touristing across the disc with a wizard that we know of, that we have heard? Very, very dear, kind, trusting type of person. So we get the Red Army, which is the quote-unquote the rebellion. They are formed mainly by children. They are extremely idealistic, but they don't really have, you know... And there are two sisters there. One is called Pretty Butterfly, who is no fool. Like, that young lady has common sense and brains, and she doesn't really trust easily, and she doesn't believe in superstition. And then we have her sister, Lotus Blossom, who does believe in the superstitions and is a bit more fanciful and trusting and kind. We also get 3 yoked oxen. Names in the counterweight continent are very interesting. Jade Fan, 3 yoked oxen, 4 herbs, who is... like, he's in the Red Army, but... bit of a turncoat, that guy, which basically you kind of expect is that kind of story. It's got a lot of politics, and there's a foreshadowing in this story that I really like. There's a foreshadowing of the rebellion of Lord Hong. We got the foreshadowing of constantly the cold barking dogs. That's basically like a cannon. One of which switched places with Rincewind, so there's a cannon in Unseen University. But we also get this constant mention of this hill that is outside the city of Hong Kong, the major city of the counterweight continent. But the bulk of this story is the adventures in the Forbidden City, how the Silver Horde gets inside the Forbidden City, the entire adventure with Rincewind, because he keeps trying to run away and he keeps being pulled back, because that's how Rincewind's life is. He tries to get away and he gets pulled back by the narrative, by the gods. Rincewind also scores points with the Emperor. Now the Emperor is a horrible human being. He is ancient, he is literally bedridden, but in order for him to get around, they wheel the bed around. And when I say that this is a horrible human being, he has people killed every morning. When he plays chess, he is playing with literal human beings and they die. He is a horrible human being. There are tortures and physical punishments. And he thinks they're funny. And Reinson, being his sarcastic self, he kind of gets under with the Emperor, at least for a little bit, by being himself. So his life is spared. He still gets thrown into prison, where he meets Two Flower. And Two Flower, being himself, he's like, whoops, did I do that? When he realizes, or starts to realize that him writing this essay is what literally sparked a rebellion, he's like, oops. I love him. And that's also where the Red Army has been imprisoned, because shenanigans. The Red Army is being set up to take the blame for the assassination of the Emperor. Like, I mean, honestly, what else would you expect? There's the guards outside are killed. There are weapons placed down, along with a map that leads them to the Emperor's chambers, where, surprise, surprise, he's already been assassinated. By this point, Cohen is already on the Imperial throne. So there's a whole lot of shenanigans with Cohen, and then later the Warlords, and Rincewind, and it's fantastic. Like, we are at the point that Rincewind meets off with death, which is something that happens every time that there's a story of Rincewind. Rincewind always meets death. This time, death introduces Rincewind to War, and War introduces Rincewind to his two sons, Terra and Panic, and his 7-year-old daughter, Clancy. Clancy is wonderful. So I know I'm skipping a lot of points because I really want you to read this book. I will give you like the spoilerific points, but like, because we are getting back to that hill. And this is one of the things that I remember clearest about this book. The original Red Army, as commanded by the Great Wizard of Lore, they fought on behalf of the original Emperor who unified the continent, One Song Mirror. So the hill outside is the tomb of the original Emperor, and no one in the city seems to realize it. Like, not even Lord Hong realizes that the hill outside is a tomb of the original Emperor. That's his lot. So original Red Army is based on the Terracotta Army. You know the one? They're here. Essentially, they are like what's the word? They're basically like remote-controlled robot army or golem army. And Rincewind is the one who finds the controller. It's fantastic. And the whole reason that the army gets going is because there's a ferocious thunderstorm that starts up. Because, of course, there are quantum weather butterflies in the area. And they set off the storm. And on top of the hill, we have this pagoda that is made out of iron, that works like an iron rod. Lightning strike. Whatever you... I can't remember what the word is. But this is also the point where Cohen the Barbarian... I mean, he's literally taking over the Emperor. Like, he's the Emperor. But he's also kind of having this existentialistic crisis upon realizing that he and the Silver Horde are the last of the heroes. But at least when you learn what happened to Ron the Barbarian from the very first book, he's become a sergeant. What's it called? Sergeant of the guards somewhere. And that's something like, that's a paid job, it has a pension, and Cohen is like, what? And that is something that will lead up to another absolutely fantastic book that I cannot wait to show you. Scourges is the last hero. So, we got Cohen the Emperor. We also get wonderful ending of Lord Hong. Because, of course, the wizards, by that point, because we are like at this point in the story, the wizards are like, you know what, we should probably work at bringing Rincewind back. But of course there was a quantum weather butterfly that interfered with Hex, and Hex does all the calculations in order to bring Rincewind back. And the quantum weather butterflies are agents of the lady, because the lady has other plans for Rincewind, set up for another story. So because of that, the calculations are a little bit off. Meaning that, like, originally, there were 2 points in this teleportation spell. There was Rincewind and the Barking Dog. And they just switched places. But now, things are a little bit different. So we got the Barking Dog, we got Rincewind, but we also got a 3rd point. It takes a little while for the Barking Dog to arrive where Rincewind was. because something else at a third point had to reach its own point, which was the university. So by the time that this chain has fully formed, well, let's just say that Lord Hong meets a very wide end, and unfortunately Mr. Saveloy as well. Mr. Saveloy has been my favorite character, like actually above Reinhardt in this story. He's been fantastic. He's been central to the plot with getting Cohen to the imperial throne, speaking the language, making up the plans. He's a former teacher. I love him, and we get to follow him into the afterlife, unfortunately, but that's how things go. Now Lord Hong is met with an endless black desert with all the ghosts of the people who really want to meet him. Mr. Saveloy, however, is picked up by Valkyrie, and that makes me really happy. Essentially all's well that ends well, except, well, Reinhardt doesn't know where he is. But by the sound of things, well, it's definitely a setup for yet another story, which we should be, if I keep to schedule, be getting to in February. That will be the Last Continent. Because, of course, the lady never plays to win. So yeah, I really hope that you had fun watching this video. I at least had a lot of fun rambling about this. It's just... So I have a playlist with other Discworld novels that I've chatted about. Hopefully you find some of it interesting, and I will continue with the series because my goal is to reread every single Discworld novel. Which is gonna take a while still. So yeah. See you later. Okay, take care. Bless.